Friday night, and it's men's night, and I am excited. I have Brother Earl with me and Brother Rob with me, so I'm not alone this week. Last week I was alone with Brother Rob right towards the end, and towards the end it got even more exciting when he joined me. So it's more exciting when I'm not by myself and I have others to share their thoughts and their experiences. So we have a panel for you tonight, the three of us tonight. And we also want you to watch a short video, just around 4.5 minutes. And then we're going to be looking at some thoughts. But I want to say welcome to everyone. And thank you for joining us tonight. Such a great honor and a privilege to have you guys, especially those who are always here, like Jenny. How you doing, Jenny? I hope all is well. Thank you for joining us. Do appreciate you being here with us. So tonight it's men's talk. It's our focus. It's our online Friday night Bible studies, and we're looking tonight at men's issues, focusing around men. And if you have any questions or any comments, you can actually go ahead and put those in the chat room. We would address those as we go through. If there are any questions that you'd like to ask us, please go ahead and put that in either chat room, Facebook, YouTube. And throughout the evening, we will pick up on that. But just want to give you some information, just some adverts that we have that would like to bring to your attention. Don't forget, on the 16th of July, yes, 16th of July is our Worship Foundation course. Already over 100 people have already registered. So that is really going amazingly, actually. I mean, in fact, Minister Cara Clark was the organizer of that. Her husband is here tonight. So, he's a part also of that team, and they're doing truly amazing. And this is part 2, if you like, of the Worship Foundation course training by Minister Yvonne Kennedy, one of our best speakers in the UK here in the Church of God of Prophecy. So you don't want to miss that at all. But don't forget, tomorrow is our big day for our global address. That's right, our international appointments, it's confirmation and transitions for COGOP in the world. So you need to go to cogop.org, not .org.uk, but cogop.org. That's where you need to go to actually find out what's happening. So please don't forget that, okay? Also, just wanted to remind you that we do have this virtual funeral service that on our website, cogop.com/virtual. So if you have a service that you would like to stream across the internet, then we can do that anywhere in the world for you. Also, I did point out that we are running this stress management course, and there are the details. Let's go above. We do have a few bookings already, so that's great. We will run it with even one person, so that's the way it will work, right? So we'll run it with even one person. So we've got more than one, obviously. So we are grateful for that. So please join us if you can. bit.ly/sad stress. And we're going to spend 2 hours, beautiful 2 hours, going through. But the amount of things that we're giving away, if you look at the benefits, okay, go to the website and see the benefits. You will realize it's a giveaway, really. It's really free, really. If you want to. Don't forget, Monday night Bible studies. I'm looking at top 10 controversies in the church. I mean, controversy is the word. Let me just quickly run through. You've got the issue about homosexuality. That's what I'll be teaching on Monday. And I'm not sure how long that's going to take. As you can see, there's the gay Bible. Right up there, rainbow, white rainbow. It's called the QJV, Queen James Version. And we have our first lesbian bishop. Her name is Bishop Eva Brownie from Sweden. And there are lots of gay female bishop, pastors, ministers, millions, by the way, millions. So we want to have a look at that. Next one is abortion right? What's your thoughts about that? Well, not so much what's your thoughts. What does the scripture say about that? Should women preach in church? That's a hot topic. We are divided over that one. What music should be allowed? Are there music for the church, or does it matter? Does it not matter? What does the scripture say? Does the scripture say anything about it? Is the scripture silenced? Well, we will see when we get there. How should we approach spiritual gifts? The most talked about spiritual gifts would be speaking in tongues. Major controversy. I've covered that. Now we'll cover that again. Also, how should we baptize? My goodness, can you believe the division that we have in the body of Christ over this? Should we sprinkle? Should we submerge? Is it in Jesus' name or is it in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? Is baptism, linked to salvation, or is it not linked to salvation? Can you be baptized? Can you be saved and not be baptized and still be saved? Can you repent, should I say, and not be baptized and be saved? For example, when I got saved, I didn't get baptized till 2 years later. What happened in that 2 years? Was I really saved? Some say yes, some say no. Well, we will look at that. Should the church be involved in politics? Wow. Should the church be the church and the world be the world? Should we be party political and so on? We know that there was a bill passed in America. They've changed it now. They've repealed that bill, whereby church could not be party political. They couldn't say to the congregation, you must vote for this one or that and that and the other. They've changed that now, so that's been changed. Next one is, should Christians drink alcohol? Wow. Should we? Should we not? Well, or is it just a little for the stomach's sake? The next one is, what about divorce or remarriage? Massive, huge, gigantic one. Now, that's only 9. I'm not going to give you the 10th one because I don't have it yet with me. But when it comes around. So join us for that. And then finally, I want to share with you that we've got Illuminate on Sunday. You don't want to miss that because we have our guest speaker all the way from Belgium. Yes, that's right. Pastor Innocent Panzu. So he'll be with us. There will be an interpreter that will interpret for him. But he's an amazing man, actually, and he has something from the Lord to share with us. So please don't miss that. And then we also have the youth focus. That will be Taylor Samuels. Great to see young men that are also leading that. There's a balance between men and women. And it's just truly amazing what the youth are doing in the Church of God of Prophecy in the UK. It truly is phenomenal. I'm telling you the truth. It truly is. Amazing. Well, let's get going then. We do have a situation discussion tonight. And the thing I like about my panel is that we don't have to all agree with each other. We just speak the truth from the heart. And that's just how we do it. And I'm glad to have these men with me. They are amazing men, and they're going to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with the man I call, this is the best way to remember Earl Lynch. I call him the incredible Earl Lynch, and he doesn't like that, but I love calling him that. I hope his wife is listening and that his wife will start calling him the incredible Earl Lynch. So Earl, go ahead and introduce yourself. So tell us who you are, what you do. Yeah, go ahead.
God bless you, Errol. My name's Earl Lynch. I am the men's ministry leader for Gloucester Street in Wolverhampton, the Church of God of Prophecy there. I also do a number of other roles within the Church of God of Prophecy at national men's level. However, in my life outside of the church, I'm a learning and development consultant. I run a company called the Kairos Experience, and we teach leadership and personal development and things like that. So it's a pleasure to be on the panel tonight, and I really look forward to engaging with you. Thank you.
I must say as well, actually, before we come on to Rob, that, being a black trainer I'm going to come back to that. You hold on to that. I'm going to come back to you. Let Rob introduce himself. I did mention earlier that Rob is married to the amazing minister, Cara Clark, one of the best singers in the UK, who actually heads up our choral worship section. Amazing woman of God. And Rob is the only man I know qualified to actually go to the National Women's Conference above me and actually be at the conference. I don't know how he does it, but he does get in. Anyway, Rob, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, sir.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Pastor Errol. Yes, so my name is Rob Clark, married to, Carol Clark. Yes, been Region 4 director for the men in Region 4 West Midlands for some time now. But as Pastor Errol says, I've been helping out with the National Women's Ministry for the last 8 to 9 years and really gained a lot of experience in that. Myself, my wife and I, we work together in all that we do, complement each other. And the worship course you even mentioned at the beginning, You know, we it was a vision that my wife had. But I also do a lot of teaching. That's my passion. That is my
Mm.
passion. So next to, mentoring and encouraging men, I've got a full-time job, project manager.
Mm.
Um, and as I say, my passion as well as teaching is IT, audio visual. So between us in the family, we work together, as I say, and we're doing so many things. Even the videos that you see maybe on a Sunday, a lot of that, I'm working behind the scenes, just making sure we got some quality products coming through.
Mm.
So you probably know of me but don't realize. Yeah.
And let's let everybody know that when Brother Rob says working behind the scenes for the video on Sunday, that's for the Sunday evening service. So he's a technician behind it, making sure the quality and the sound quality is good for us. So thank you very much, Brother Rob. Rob, I'm gonna, I, I, I'm tempted to ask this question to Earl first of all, and then I'm gonna ask Rob to introduce the video that we're going to watch for 4 minutes. You're a black trainer. We live in a white dominated company setting. You're going to companies delivering training, Microsoft and all these. Have you ever been faced with racism? They didn't know you were black. You were coming. You turn up. You're black. And how do you deal with that?
Okay. Two ways. Have I ever had people in my audience that have been deliberately racist? Yes, I have, and I'm going to answer that one in just a sec. But I think the first thing is it starts with me. If I go into a classroom, into a conference, believing that because of my color I shouldn't be there, I've lost the game already. So the first thing I have to tell myself is I am the professional who's paid to be there. I have a voice. I know my subject. I know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to live my mission by making a difference in these people's lives.
Mm.
So that's point number one. I must go in with that mindset. And as soon as I'm within the first 30 to 45 seconds, I've got them. They are mine. I own that audience. They will listen. They will engage. They will get something that's business relevant, highly engaging, quite a lot of fun, but it's going to be most memorable. And if they take it on board, it's going to catapult them forward. However, I did have an incident many years ago where I had a guy who I had a guy who was critical, very deeply critical of many of the things I was doing. I was co-presenting with another white master facilitator, and the master facilitator got me at the break time, and he said, "Oh, just give me the word, and I'll punch his lights out for you. Earl, just tell me, give me permission." And I said, "No, Ed, we don't do that. We don't do that. We're going to deal with this guy professionally." And what happened was when we went back in the classroom, I used the power of the audience to bring out whether what was happening to me specifically was correct or not. So I asked the audience, about 20 people in the audience, I said, did anybody before the break hear this gentleman say this, this, and this? And they all went, yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me, do you think that what he said was fair? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? Is he justified in what he's saying? Because I really would appreciate the feedback. And about 10 people said, "Oh, I'm glad you're giving us permission to say that because what he was doing was absolutely ridiculous." And they told him, "If you don't want to be here, go." I didn't even have to fight the battle. What I did was I used the power of rational reason within the audience, and they decided what was right. They decided what was wrong. The gentleman left the program at lunchtime. However, the guy who was master facilitator of the program, he said, "Earl, you should have let me hit him, man. You should have let me hit him. I would have gladly taken it on your behalf." But you never solve anything that in that way. And to be a certain extent, you know what? This is the same battle that we're fighting with Black Lives Matter. We are the oppressed. We are the oppressed. And we need the support of our colleagues in the society to see that this is an injustice And just like Martin Luther King says, injustice anywhere is
Mm.
injustice everywhere. And we've
Mm.
got to teach
Mm.
people how to stand up and
Amen.
be counted.
Yes. I don't know if you've ever been through any experience yourself, Brother Rob, before you introduce the video, but that you want to share. I know that you work in top companies as well, and
Mm,
even from Earl and myself, I have only ever in 1984 was when I started my professional training. Um, I've only ever done training for one black organization, in terms of
Really?
staff development. Only one. All the rest were
Wow.
white. So I have a lot of stories I could tell.
mm,
But the most negative I've ever had, though, Brother Earl, was from black was from black
Yeah.
people, not the whites,
mm,
unfortunately.
mm,
Rob, I don't know if you've ever had any experience yourself, Rob.
mm. So yes, I have, but no, I haven't had what I'm going to call racism in the company that I've been working for the
Mm,
last over 20 odd years.
excellent. Mm,
Does that mean that there's no racism? I couldn't answer that, but I haven't
mm,
personally seen that, and
experience
I've
it.
spoke
Yes.
around that in within the black organisation within the company. But what there definitely is a thing called unconscious bias, and I'm not
Mm,
Yeah,
yet
yeah.
convinced it's racism. I think I look at
Yeah,
people, and like Brother Earl, I don't have this racism default in my mind because that makes me feel
okay.
like a
Okay.
defeatist and a bit of a chip on the
Yes. Or
shoulder.
a victim.
And I hope
Yes.
I don't
Mm,
offend anybody by saying that, but that's just me and how I approach
mm,
things. And we're going to show a video, which I'll probably explore, want to probably describe or
mm,
really talk around after. But I've received racism before, and before I got to that company, I got a job actually. I was living in Wolverhampton at the time. I won't name the company, but I got the job over the phone. And one of the best things my mom did, in many ways, because I asked her why she called me Robert, she says because if they don't see you, they'll treat you equally. Rather than if you're given another name, and in Wolverhampton,
okay.
Brother
Okay.
Earl will,
Yes.
will will know where I'm coming from in the back in the days, and like most areas. So anyway, I got this
Mm,
job. They phoned me to confirm, that can I make it and just come in to sign the papers. So I walked into the reception, and there's other people sitting there, and so on. And then a typical elderly white gentleman with the glasses, that lean over the nose and can decide to do that, and the clipboard. He's looking for a Mr. Clark. And I'm standing in front of him trying to say, I'm here. And he goes, no, I'm looking for Mr. Clark. And I'm going, no, I'm here. And he coughed and he stuttered and he went, oh, just to let you know that the job has gone. And then he walked back into his office, and I stood there, and the people who sat there just shook their head in disgust. And I was quite young then, didn't know what I had to. I just felt so much shame, and I had to leave there. And I knew it's because he saw me, yeah, and the color of my
mm,
skin,
mm.
and
That's heavy.
but
Mm,
and while I was studying, I studied in Dudley College. I will name that college, and I hope it's changed now. The racism from the lecturers. Unbelievable.
mm,
yeah.
They were asking me why I'm there. Shouldn't I be in
mm,
nightclubs dancing with white girls? They were saying. I had to go for an interview just to justify why I was there. There was a time when it was an exam and my pen ran out, and I had to write in
mm,
pencil. So I explained that my pen had run out. I'm using pencil, but this guy didn't want to know. He didn't want, and he came in one day, read out all the results in the class, and then he left my name out. I said, "Excuse me, sir, where's my results?" Oh, you failed. I was the only black in the class. And I says, I
mm,
couldn't have. I had to then go up to the top, use my mom at the time to say, how do I deal with this matter? I was
mm,
young and
mm,
naive. This is racism. No one taught me about racism, and we fought it, and we got the guy disciplined to the point, he was removed. So I could tell you
mm.
loads of experiences,
Yes,
and I want
yes,
to save some of it
yes,
until after because I got
yes,
myself in trouble a few weeks just talking about, despite racism in the world, I still believe in humankind, and just
yes,
because of the
yes,
color of the
yes.
skin, I don't want to get angry because of certain people being racist, and that's
Mm.
just me. But this video is going to speak volumes for me because
Yes, introduce
how
the
he
video
puts it
then, and
across.
then we play that.
Yes.
Yes. Mm.
So this video, I'm hoping many viewers have seen this already, but it's an interview, England versus West Indies this week, so it's quite new. And the commentators, one's called Wardy, and you'll hear Michael Holding refer to him as Wardy, asking Michael Holding, what's your view? Does it impact you? Black Lives Matter. And I won't give too much away, but it's very emotional. There's a two-piece. We probably only showed the one piece tonight, but by all means, Google it, find it. It's quite emotional. And we'll speak more of it on the other side, really. But it's Michael Holding being interviewed about Black Lives Matter.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and play this clip now by Michael Holding. It's 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we will start the discussion.
How did you feel speaking down the barrel of a camera about this subject?
Well, I obviously didn't get as emotional as Ebony because, as I said in that video, I didn't really experience a great deal of that as a young man growing up in Jamaica, perhaps because I wasn't in that society or mixing with people that would have shown me that racism. But what I want to expand on, though, Wardy, is what I said about education. Education is important unless we just want to continue living the life that we are living and continue just having demonstrations every now and again and a few people saying a few things. And when I say education, I mean going back in history. What people need to understand is that this thing stems from a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. The dehumanization of the black race is where it started. And people will tell you, oh, that's a long time ago, get over it. No, you don't get over things like that. And the society has not gotten over something like that. I'll skip all the gap between those long years ago and make one point and then go backward. That lady in the Central Park in New York, Amy Cooper, I think is her name. If she did not have in her DNA the thought process that she was white, this man is black, if I call a police officer, 9 times out of 10 he's going to be white, I'm going to be considered right immediately. The black guy will have to prove that he's not guilty, and by the time he proves that he's not guilty, he might be dead. She had that in her mind from day one. That is why she said and did what she did. How do you get rid of that in the society? By educating both sides, black and white. I hear people talking about brainwashing. I didn't quite understand as a young man what brainwashing meant. I now understand what brainwashing meant, what it means. We have been brainwashed, and not just black people. White people have been brainwashed in different ways. I go back many years. Think about religion. You and I are supposed to be Christians. I'm not really a very holy person, not a very religious person, but that's what we were taught. Look at Jesus Christ, the image that they give you of Jesus Christ. Pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Where Jesus came from, who in that part of the world looks that way? But again, that's the brainwashing to show you this is what perfection is. This is what the image of perfection is. If you look at any plays of those days, Judas, who betrayed Jesus, he's a black man. Again, brainwashing people into think, oh, he's a black man. He's the bad man. Go through history, Wardy. These lights that are shining on us. You can tell me who invented the light bulb, right? Thomas Edison, right? Everybody knows Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Thomas Edison invented a light bulb with a paper filament. It burnt out in no time at all. Can you tell me who invented the filament that makes these lights shine throughout? Nobody knows, because he's a black man. It was not taught in schools. Louis Howard Latimer invented the carbon filament to allow lights to continuously shine. Who knows that? Everything should be taught. When you go back through the schooling as a young man, I remember my school days. I was never taught anything good about black people. And you cannot have a society that is brought up like that, both white and black, that only teach what's convenient to the teacher. History is written by the conqueror, not by those that are conquered. History is written by the people who do the harm, not by the people who get harmed. And we need to go back and teach both sides of history. And until we do that and educate the entire human race, this thing will not stop. They keep on telling me there's nothing called white privilege. Give me a break. I don't see any white people going into a store on Oxford Street and being followed. A black man walks in, somebody is following him everywhere he goes. That is basic white privilege. Whether that white person went in to rob the place or not, is not going to be thought of that way. And things like that have to change.
I could see that Michael Holding was just getting very emotional right towards the end, and there are so many points, and maybe it might be wise to take each point, but maybe just your first reaction, though, Brother Rob, from the video, just your overall reaction, and then quick over.
Yeah. I mean, for me, yet again, it got to my emotions. We spoke weeks ago about men and their emotions, and do men have emotions? You saw the emotions there, and to be fair, a lot of the
on
men,
national TV as well.
big TV. I ran I moderated a Father's Day Sunday service, and I don't cry often, but I ended up crying, and I was moderating, and I was going to get myself together, but I was weeping. I couldn't control my voice had gone, and stuff. So anyway, that's about my emotions. But going back to this video, again, it got to my emotions because I realized then, and I did realize before, we as men, we're storing up so many things, as black men, we store up so many things. He's crying and he doesn't talk about all the things why he's crying, but he explains afterwards. There is another bit to this, a longer piece, but he's crying because of that, because it hurts. It hurts that everywhere you go, you have to laugh it off when somebody rejects you because of your color of your skin. It hurts, that if you walk with your white counterpart, or if you work in a workplace, somebody with a lighter skin, a white person, is going to be more favorable over you. And when I was being brought up, I was told, and I'm sure like most on the panel, we have to work twice as hard to do the same job to get into the same position. Call it racism, call it whatever you want, it's not right. And these are the things that we, especially as black men and women, but black men, have to deal with and store up, learn defense mechanisms. So we laugh, we keep calm, we keep quiet. And when I saw that the other day, I had to cry again. I think, Lord, why are we being punished? Why is it, a Jamaican who wasn't even in Wolverhampton suffering the racism still feels the same pain? Now, he talks about his parents going through the abuse. When I hear people say about, my parents' generation didn't do this, didn't do that, let's talk about what they did do. Let's talk about what they did do. From the very name, you might say, yes, it's a slave name. And they were doing it because they knew of the racism and the difficulties that I was going to go through, and it's put me in good stead. You can say that I've been colonialized and all that through our education and all this stuff. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. But I tell you what, it could have been a whole lot worse, and I'm very much aware, even the church that we go to, I hear the criticism of Church of God of Prophecy and what the church is not doing. It could be a whole lot worse if we did nothing. And it's important that we don't look at other people and take them down, but we look at individuals like ourselves on the panel and encourage our black men. We are too quick as even black people to even fight amongst ourselves, let alone black versus white. And so for me, just to hear what he spoke about in that 4 minutes really touched me. But it's the stuff that we didn't see also touched me, because he's married to a Portuguese, a white person. And so he gets it double. He gets it double whammy wherever he goes. And he talks about it in Australia, England, and wherever else he goes. Racism is just ripe, or unconscious bias, I call it, and stuff as well. So for me, it's really bad, because me as a black man, I've had to store a lot of things, and it hurts me even more when people say, like you and I, what are we doing? We need to, we're doing the best we can. It might not be good enough, I agree, but if everybody else can do what they can do, we can do it together. And it can't be just black people who needs to break this. It's other races as white people. So as much as we're saying white are being racist in this context, we need our same white counterparts to help us through this, through education.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Thank you for
I'll
that.
pause there, because I could go on all night about this.
No, absolutely. And rather
yeah.
than going into the content at the moment, brother, Errol, I'm going to look at them maybe one at a time, hopefully. What's your overall thoughts in just seeing that? I'll share mine in a moment. Go ahead.
My overall thoughts are a wonderful video. Excellent that Michael Holding expressed himself like that on British television. There is no motion, there's no movement without emotion. And one of the things, particularly we as black men, are somewhat reluctant to do is to show our passion, to show our emotion. And by virtue of the fact that I think Michael Holding his emotion in that video, it's touched many people on a very personal and private level. And we are now responding to that. We wouldn't have been showing the video if he was not emotional about it. And he's speaking about what we call the oppression cycle, in that he's identified that there is a fear of difference from white people toward black people. Hence, that's why we get followed around the shop. That has come from stereotyping us. Watch out. You can imagine the briefing that the security guards get when they see black people, the briefing that the police must get. They say, if you see a black man or a black person that looks like this, treat them with a little bit of caution because they could be stereotyped as thieves. So stereotyping takes place, which leads to prejudice. Prejudice leads to discrimination. Discrimination leads to oppression of that particular people who are part of that group who have been stereotyped. But here's the worst part. Not only do we get oppressed institutionally, we also do something called internalize oppression. We internalize it. In other words, we tell ourselves we're not good enough. So I might say to myself, you know what? I'm not going to apply for that job at Microsoft because they probably wouldn't want somebody like me in there. I'm not good enough to work in that organization. Now I'm telling myself stuff that people have fed into my head, and that's the brainwashing that he's mentioned. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely spot on, because now we're faced with a situation where we're telling ourselves we're not good enough. We're telling ourselves that we don't deserve to be successful. We're telling ourselves that we'll never make a good barrister or a great architect, somebody who deserves to deliver training and development or learning and development in a blue chip company. And we all need to go through that educational process where we realize we are good enough. And Rob, I love what you said, because Martin Luther King says the oppressor is never going to voluntarily give up their privilege. We have to demand it. We have to demand status, and we can't do it alone. And this isn't going to be an easy fight, because it means that we're asking for equal treatment and justice.
Amen. Thank you for that. No, I do appreciate that. I think one of the thoughts that run through my mind is sometimes there is even the pressure on someone like Michael Holden to say what he's said in the presence of white people, in a white environment, knowing that he could possibly lose his job.
Absolutely.
This is this is the problem with a lot of black folks, is that there is that element of fear that you can lose your job if you speak up too much.
Absolutely.
You are radical. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I chip in there, because
without saying,
because I don't promote it, and I should, but in the company I work in, I'm part of a diversity and inclusion group, and I know Brother Earl knows because I've asked him to come in and help. but part of that, with the Black Lives Matter movement that happened a few weeks back, we spoke about it internally. And we says, what is the company saying? Because it didn't appear to be doing what you see on Sky Sports and other company, and all that stuff. And internally, we couldn't get the company to really do what we really wanted to do. And I have to be careful here. And we came to a conclusion, because Dr. Robert Beckford, he's a professor in theology, black theology, and everything else. He came in a year or so ago and spoke about this. He says, look, if you really need to make a difference, you have to be prepared to lose your job. So I'm picking up what you said, Pastor Errol, because a lot of people do what they do because they want a career. Just like Michael Holding, he wants a career in commentating. But there comes a point where each one of us has to ask ourselves, is the career more important than, in this case, talking about racism? And I'm throwing it out there because I'm facing that daily. A lot of people are facing it daily, and it's a reality. Now, people can call me, you need courage to speak up to your company. Yes, I do. But at the same time, I need to make a living. And there will be a boundary that everybody will go, enough's enough. Now, I'm at a point where I don't want to necessarily lose my job, but I am prepared to lose my job if I find that there's absolutely injustice. And there will be somebody out there going, but Rob, you know this is racist. I do, but I believe I can make a lot of difference being in the company, trying to educate people, because I don't believe necessarily everybody is just that ignorant and don't want to change. And so are we prepared to lose our jobs? That's a question for each one of us, you know. And we spoke about it in our group, because I said to the younger ones, you know, because they says, Rob, I don't want to lose my job. And I says, well, just be mindful there of the impact you can make, you know, being not prepared to lose your job. And that's the reality for each one of us in a profession. And that's why, and you're so right to raise that with Michael Holding, because he's talking to, you know, commentators who, not just them two, who speak so patronizing sometimes about, you know, the West Indies and this, that, and the other. But you could tell enough's enough. And each one of us will go through that at some point in our
Yes.
life. Mm.
Yeah, we had a youth focus, and we had Chanel Barkley, who brought on Professor Robert
Ah,
Beckford. I don't know if you watched that.
okay.
Yes. And one of the points he made mention, I'm going to have to paraphrase this, is that the church is absolutely excellent when it comes
Yeah.
to, um, let me put it this way, I'm just going to get it right. In terms of social action, we are very good. We are exceptional when it comes to the food banks
Yeah.
and all of these things. But
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
when it comes
Social
to
justice.
social justice, we
Yeah.
don't exist almost.
I've heard that. Social welfare versus social justice. I've heard it, and bless Dr. Robert Beckford, bless him. And you know, I do know where he's coming from. I think I know him enough to know why he's saying it, and he's right in many ways.
Okay.
But
Yes.
we got to be so careful on that, because social welfare, he calls it a sticking plaster. It's more than
Okay.
that for me. It's more than that for me, because if we, like other churches, weren't doing that, people would literally die. And a plaster for me
Yeah.
doesn't stop a wound. You know, it's not a matter of life or death. A plaster.
Mm.
You know, so I think it's more than a plaster that we do. But I do know what he's saying, I've only been with Church of God of Prophecy for 20 years, and that might sound a long time for some, but I know it's not. And the point I'm making, when I joined, um, talking about politics was a no-no. To
That's
even
right.
talk
That's
about
right.
you being part of a
Yeah.
political party, you were going to hell, you know,
Yes.
type of
Yes.
thing.
Yes. I
You
remember
know,
those
so
days. Yeah.
it's education. It's
Mm.
education. So we must celebrate that the church is getting better, but we shouldn't be taking our church down to say that they're no good at this. We must
Mm.
celebrate progress, and yes, encourage people to get to a place. And Dr. Robert Beckford's doing a lot in the community, so I will
Yeah,
not
he is.
disrespect
Yeah.
him in that
Yeah.
sense.
Mm. Mm.
But I get him. But I don't want people to then misunderstand what he's saying, because although he calls it a sticking plaster, social welfare. If we weren't doing it, guess what we'd be talking about? Well, the church is very good at social justice, but can't do
Mm.
social welfare, and they're the church.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
so we got to embrace it and
Okay.
be proud of it as well. Mm.
Robert, yes, we
Yeah,
watched that
absolutely.
video. I want to go to that video now, and I just wanted to tackle what the first point really that I put down here is education, because what I found interesting about the video, I totally agree with education, but there's an aspect of it that he brought up that I never thought of, and what he's really saying is we got to educate both black and white.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Your take on that, and how, because that would have to be a government legislation that says we have to put the education of, let's say, history, in the schools in this particular way, isn't it? Go ahead, brother Early. What's your thought? Mhm.
Oh, I'm loving where you're going with this and the whole education thing. For me, the champion of this is a lady called Jane Elliott. She was all the way back from 1960s. The day after Martin Luther King died, she decided to teach that lesson to her school kids, and she divided them by blue and brown eyes, and she gave the
Mm.
blue eyes less privilege than the brown eyes. And wow, it kicked off an enormous race row almost. But she's been teaching that stuff for years and years. And she's found that because of the color of our skin, we are treated differently. We're treated unjustly, unfairly. And the education is not just for black people to be educated, but it's for the whole of the white people to be educated as well. Now, one of the things that we found out recently as well, she says that it's not education. She says what we go through in school and college and university is indoctrination. In other words, the things that fuel the oppressor's well-being, the standing that the oppressor has, that's what we're being taught. And one easy example to just think about, and I'm just going to throw this out at you. If you look at a picture of the world map, it would look like Greenland is as big as Africa. It's rubbish. That map, the one that we have in our schools right the way through the world, is an incorrect model because they've stretched certain parts of the map to correspond with the countries that are predominantly white and European.
Right.
If you took Greenland in reality, it would fit into Algeria, which is one of the northern African countries. So if you can do that with a world map, and you can get the world to believe this is what Earth looks like, and we have satellite technology, and you get away with it, what can you teach about black people and their worth and their value? Because as Michael Holding says, we have been dehumanized. We've been looked on as property. We've been looked on. In fact, in the American Constitution, at one time, we were verified as 3/5 human. Not one human, but 3/5 human. So therefore, if you know you've got something that's 3/5 human, you don't have to treat it like a human being. You can beat it, you can brutalize it, you can put it out in the sun all day, you can demand that it works, you don't have to pay it anything because you're doing it a favor. It's not human. And that's what has led to us being part of the situation why we've been oppressed. And it's gone on over and over and over in the years. In 1833 in America, slavery was over, but it wasn't legislated until 1865. But then the clever system in America, what they did over there, they decided, well, we're going to make it difficult for you to proceed as black people, because if you break one of our laws, then we'll put you in prison for next to nothing. Now, why is this important? Because there was a legislative change. There was an amendment called the 13th Amendment, which said if you have a criminal conviction against you, you're not allowed to vote, you're not allowed to serve on a jury, you're not allowed to leave the country, and you're not allowed to have a gun or to have bullets. So right there, that's just 4 common ones. You're also not allowed to have, jobs or certain housing or education rights or certain things like that. So therefore, you become a non-human. In other words, you become a slave. The 13th Amendment keeps you in slavery. And that's why today we see mass incarceration. Because if we can get black guys to get a record, a police record, and more importantly, a conviction, then they're not allowed to vote. So don't be surprised if people like Donald Trump get voted in again in November. Even though there's millions of people who are available, who potentially look like they're in the country, they're not. Because half of them don't have the right to vote. Because many of us as black people, we have a criminal conviction. Now, how did that come about? It came about because we have institutional oppression, institutional racism. And that's what we've got to fight next. If we fight a George Floyd case, we're looking at an isolated incident. And there's lots of them. But the root that really needs to be chopped down is the institutions. And we can't do that alone. We only make up a small percentage of the population. We need good people to stand up for what is wrong. So when you see evil, hear evil, or you hear evil being spoken of, it's incumbent upon everybody, black, white, brown, to take a stand. Injustice
Yeah,
anywhere
Amen.
is injustice
It's
everywhere.
justice everywhere. Yes.
yeah. C-
I
c-
think. I think.
c-
I think.
mm.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Rob. Go
I
ahead.
was
Go
going to
ahead.
just tap into that because I'm because what Brother Earl was just kind of not hypnotized. I was hooked into it. Yes, definitely. But then I was thinking to myself, well, then how do we do that? Because it's one thing to put it out there, but it's
Mm,
important for people to hear and understand how we do that because we can and we do. We're doing it already. I'm going to throw out some examples of what we do already. So there was an organization called Black Boys Can,
what's
of
that?
which I was
Yes,
very much part of. I used to go into the
yes,
schools and we heard of Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Black Boys Can. Very strong statement. I remember when we
Mm,
even came up with the name, it was like, this is going to cause some friction. And it did. I used to go to headmasters and go, I've come here to talk about black boys because they can achieve things. And so, but you know what? That was a
mm,
difficult period. But I'm so happy I did it. And now the organization have a school and guess what that
mm,
school can do? It can educate about history. It can give a balanced view. Because when I was at school, I remember sitting in the class up to this point when I'm near my 50s soon, and I remember the teacher talking about Walter Raleigh, Francis Drake, and all these, and I was probably about 10 years old, and I was looking out the window going, why is there's no black people? You're talking about there was no black person spoken about as inventing or doing anything. So what I'm saying is that we can mentor people, we can coach people. In my mentoring days, I'm not so active now, but still run the charity. We, you know what we used to talk about 10, 15 years ago under Black Boys Can? Black presence in the Bible. And just the other day, we had a local, youth talk and so on. And I said to them, just little things like that, talking about, just let them know that black people don't necessarily have a negative stereotype. Because when I was mentoring, I asked these young boys in the classroom, what does the society describe you as? And these young men said 20 different things. It says thieves, criminals, hoodies, aggressive, miserable, don't say nothing. I said, I got it, guys. I got it. This is what society tell you that you are. Right, now tell me what you are. And the room went quiet. And the first voice says, I guess it's all that stuff on the board. And that's when I realized these guys are actually believing the stereotype that they're given. Yeah. And the point that I'm making is that when I start talking about the black presence in the Bible, maybe people listening today, tell me a white person who was in the Bible, let alone asking me the question,
mm,
name me a black.
mm,
The Bible's full of black people. The Bible's based around Egypt. Guess where Egypt is? It's in Africa. It's not in Europe. It's not near England. It's in Africa. So all these Israel, Palestine, these are not white people. But somehow we've designed a white Jesus with blue eyes and blonde hair. It's crazy. And so me as an individual, all of us on the panel, mothers, fathers, let's start teaching and putting stuff in our house that
mm,
represents the
mm,
truth. Don't wait for the government. Don't wait for the school that they go to teach. Teach it from your house. So I want to say that because Brother Earl said some really powerful things, but I don't want people feeling that we're going to wait for somebody to do it. We can do it right now. We can do it tonight and tomorrow. Start educating, history, just like Mocha Holding talked about that name. What was that name he mentioned about? Wasn't Thomas? It was Lewis Howard Latimer. I didn't know that. Who invented the carbon filament that makes us have this very bright light? It wasn't Thomas Edison with the paper filament or whatever it was.
mm,
It was
mm,
Lewis Latimer. Wow. We can share that tonight and
mm,
tomorrow.
mm.
That's where it happens. That's where it happens.
Yeah, I think as I said, the point around the education is to do with both black and white, and to me, it
Mm,
has to, a great place for it to start is in school. It will take a long
mm,
time, and that may be somebody asks a question, and what are we doing as a church? And I think in this
mm,
particular point, this is where if we were in particular positions of authority as a church, it would be easier for us to make these recommendations and be a part of these decisions. Outside of it, then we have to make the recommendations to the relevant bodies. But as you mentioned, like I think the school is called King Solomon
King Solomon. Yeah.
Business, etc. And there are one or two black-led schools around the country that obviously can take on that, and obviously they got to follow government legislation in regards to education. But I want to move on to the point about brainwashing because you talk about it earlier. You use a word about indoctrination,
Internalized oppression.
brainwashing. Yes, because what Michael Holden is getting at, if I understand it correctly, is that this brainwashing has been going on for hundreds of years. It's not something that
Yeah.
And I also want to tie the brainwashing into the word you used earlier, dehumanizing. I mean,
Yeah.
when I think about it, it really is sad that human beings could come up with that kind of strategy against another set of human beings, so that they will feel so inferior to the extent that they don't have, as you mentioned, Earl. We are not good enough. I don't feel good enough. So because you don't feel good enough, you just don't go ahead. What do you see as the great danger? Not so much how brainwashing come about. We do know that the great danger, and how do we come out of it? How does Black people, for example, Rob, you speak very confidently as a person who is not brainwashed today. But I want to know, how did you get to where you are? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because how can the children cope with it? Because if you're being indoctrinated from a child to 21, I mean, that's like 12, 20 years of indoctrination. How do you now at 21, 22 come out of this? Let me start with you, Earl. How do we come out of this?
Right. So I think Rob said it earlier. It's about education. Education is so important here because it enables you to know stuff that is truth. And with truth, you get what we call paradigm shifts. So you can
Yes.
move your framing of what you used to think and you can think something completely new. So to give an example, right? People at one time thought that the world was flat. And if you believe the world was flat and I was captain of a ship and it looked like I was going to sail off the end of the world, it wouldn't be a surprise that the people on board the ship would fight me, would want to hurt me because they wouldn't want to come off the end of the planet. But we know now through education that the world is in fact round and that we can keep going round. So education gives you an opportunity to view the world in a completely different way. And one of the things that we've got to stop doing is taking on board the internalized oppression which has been given to us by many white people in that, they've said we're lazy, that we're aggressive, that we're super predators, that we're beasts, and that our women are more likely to be in a servitude kind of role. We got to stop believing that. Because the more you believe it, you will start to internalize that and you'll start to believe it. You've got to see yourself as a proud, professional, able to cope, able to stand on your feet, able to have intelligent conversation, part of society, part of the fabric of the society that makes a difference in the world. If you see yourself as a contributing member, then you're much more likely to hold your head up when you go out and project that image to the rest of the world. But unfortunately, too many of us who don't do that.
So really what you're saying is it's really around the education. It's really around the education.
I was told when I was in school, nobody from the school will ever become a doctor. Nobody from this school will ever become a doctor. Now, when I heard that from somebody in authority, guess what? I believed it. And it was one of the most destructive things that could ever have been told to a 15-year-old black guy, because it shapes the way you see your future and it makes you think differently about what's possible. However, thank God that I had a different view. Thank God that I had an education. Thank God that I traveled the world a bit and I saw that there were black people who were professional and who could do things like that. And I got the appropriate breaks and a bit of luck, and God's love took me to a place where I can now stand on my feet and say, hey, the world is your oyster. You can have whatever you want if you're prepared to put the work in. And yeah, a bit of break and a bit of luck and God's love and God's will following you, you can do anything. anything.
Mm.
Rob, going back to the Black Boys Camp, because I used to also go into the schools on behalf of the Black Boys Camp program as well with
Mm.
Delaney Brown. I used to go to a lot of schools,
Yes,
and
yes, yes, yes.
Delaney was the one who organized it, and I was more like the guy who delivered it in the school. And I must
Right.
say, it was uplifting experience for me. I enjoyed it because it was an area that I'm passionate about. So I was
Mm.
giving these kids my very best, if you see what I'm saying, and so on.
Yes.
And there was
Yeah.
some great benefits. But doesn't the education that we're talking about start in the families, black families? Because let's assume for a moment that some whites are not gonna take to it, but we can actually do something about that in the school education. So
Yes.
if you and I and Earl were a part of the team that makes a decision, we would therefore go ahead and say, well, we're going to change the education system in the school
Yes.
to incorporate that white
Yes.
kids, black kids, everyone's going to be taught a fair history. However,
Yes.
let's assume that that's not going to take place for some time. Isn't there something that families can do? Shouldn't the church, shouldn't black leaders be getting this message to black families to say, educate your kids
Yes.
yourself?
Yes. So, and this is the point I really want to put across, that we are already doing it. We are
Right.
already doing it.
Good.
The
Good.
criticism is we're not doing enough of it, and you have to agree with that. But at the same time, I said at the beginning of this event, is that stop knocking, not you, but stop knocking one another and encourage, promote
Yes.
it, because we're doing far more than what we should be doing. As a third sector, if it wasn't for that, I don't know where this country alone would be. And in terms of Black Boys Can, and I know you know, but for those who don't know, and it may have changed name, but it's still the same principle. It starts from within the home. Now, in terms of the very charity that I chair is a product of the Black Boys Can, where it's about parents and children together. And a lot of the issues, which maybe for another night, is about absent fathers, and the impact that can have. Doesn't always have a negative impact, but for a majority of families, it has a massive impact when the father is not in the home. It means the mother has to compensate for their child and for themselves as well. And for a lot of the single parents, they become bitter. They become bitter of men, but guess what? They become bitter of black men. They soon build up this thing without them knowing that they can't even have another relationship with another black man, because of the way they have no trust for the black man. So when you ask the question, does it start within the home? 100%. And guess where we need to target? The black man, because if that black man can stay in the home, and not just stay in the home, because he can still be absent in the home, talk about emotions, talk about communication. Who's got it right? Because I haven't, but if we can learn
Mm.
to speak and encourage other within the home, use the Bible. It talks about certain principles, but the thing I really wanted to kind of conclude on this is there was three words that came up as you asked the question. Some very good questions, Pastor Errol, but I came up
Mm.
with power, I've come up
Mm.
with desire, and I've come up
Mm.
with motivation, because education is key, right? Because we heard it's almost like power. It's power.
Mm.
Knowledge is power, is what I'm saying. But also, we can't forget God in all this. We cannot forget, and we don't
Absolutely.
talk about it
Yes.
often because
Yes.
we are Christians. But I want people who are not Christians to understand that it's through the grace of God we do what we do. And then with
Mm.
that, we need to be then encouraged, motivated, obedient to the Holy Spirit. But this thing, I was thinking about it. Why is it that some people just stay where they are? And then when I read the Bible, it tells me, be
Mm.
comfortable. We have no reason to come out of this comfort zone that this system has given us for some people. Why am I different? It's because I was never comfortable. As a child, I just knew something
Mm.
wasn't right. I just didn't know what it
Mm.
was. And as I've been educated over the years, I've learned what it is. And I've
Mm.
learned to be part of the community, yeah, be part of the world, but don't conform to it. Don't
Mm.
conform to it. And my
Mm.
mind has been renewed a long time ago. And just because I don't necessarily, see me with a placard and a logo and for this, that, and the other, it doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means that I
Mm.
choose to do what I can do, the best I can do. But there's some people
Mm.
who won't do nothing because they have no motivation, they have no desire, or
Mm.
they've tried and they've lost all the will to live and just decided to comply. And so it's important that us as individuals, we motivate others, give them the desire, let them know that they can make a difference too. Because as I say, we can throw out all these things and say, what's the church doing? What's this doing? The government? Yes, they can, but we can make a difference on our own. And we got to believe that. We got to stop this negative, slave-minded mentality, whatever we want to call it. We got to stop that ourselves, because if we can't make an impact. You're going to walk into places, you're going to call them racism, and they're not racist. You're just not good enough. You know, because you're in a dark place. You know, we got to think positive, be positive. I can see Brother Earl waving, so I'm going to stop.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to give you a good story of what it could look like if we get it right. Many years ago, I used to work for an organization called Normid Housing Association. And at the time, it was not too long after the riots in the West Midlands. There was a church group from the Church of God of Prophecy, and they made petition to the government to say, look, we want some housing that's specific to our black elders. Now, we didn't have a housing association that was catering for that. So what happened was my organization listened to the voices from the Church of God of Prophecy, and it took on board two people who were potentially able professionals to go into the housing movement. They both got trained by our organization and eventually became the chief executive and one of the directors of what is now Nehemiah Housing Association. If you know Nehemiah Housing Association, it was birthed from the Church of God of Prophecy and from a number of other organizations as well. But they came out of what black people asked for, what black people campaigned for in a professional and proper way. And now Nehemiah Housing Association is probably the largest black-led housing association in the whole of the United Kingdom. It's led by Llewellyn Graham, and two of the directors on there, both Patrick Hepburn and also Kevin Fearon, are members of our church. So here's an example of how it can be done right, how we can campaign, how we can ask government to put resources our ways, how we can partner with white organizations who have like-mindedness in the vision that we have, and how we can be successful by campaigning and doing things together. Now that's an independent organization doing fantastic work for not just black people, not just black elders, but for all nations, black, brown, and white. This is the difference we can make. It's not a fight that we should take alone. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. What those guys did back in the day was they saw an unjust situation which was largely affecting us as black elders, but they could expand that to include everybody, and they're still there today and very successful at what they do. Just imagine if we had more vision like that. What could we do in education? What could we do in social welfare? What could we do with the court system, with probation system, with learning and development? We could change the world, but it just takes people to open up their hearts and their minds to what's possible, rather than keep looking back on how things have gone in the past. Just be open to a new vision. We can change the world.
You're on mute, Brother Earl.
Oh,
Sorry,
please.
my
Oh, yeah.
apologies. I just want to build on that because I think that's a very powerful point, because it's not so much asking the question. Yes, you can ask the question, what is the church doing? And I agree with that question, and we got to look at what the church is doing. But it's also, what are you as an individual doing? Because
Yeah.
I want to say, this is how I met Earl. You know, I was 22
Yeah.
at the time, when a few of us in the community, black young men, Brother Rob, came together, talk about Black Boys Can. And we came together and we took over a disused bus garage. The majority of us were ex-prisoners. And we took over a disused bus garage and we converted it into a multi-million pound organization. Now, that's
Yeah.
what a group of us did. What could a group of other people do? Because it's easy to stand back and say, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'll give you a classic example, actually. There was a guy from LA, he's passed away now. His name is Ted Watkins. And we said to him, Ted, people keep on saying we're not doing this and we're not doing that and we're not doing this. And he gave us an absolutely classic answer. He said, the next time they come and ask you that you're not doing this, you're not doing this, ask them what are they doing.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah,
I'm saying
yeah,
is that we can all help by joining some form of organization. Start one if you want to. Get
yeah.
involved in one. Like, for example, Rob, you're talking about Black Boys Can and about, King
Mm,
Solomon School. Get involved in the school from a voluntary point of
mm,
view. Find out about it. If
mm.
not, find out one in your locality, in your area. Start something, do something, but don't just wait for somebody else to do it. Ask yourself the
Mm,
question, what am I doing and what can I do? And what I
that's
did
right.
was I joined the organization that I already started 6 months previously before I joined it. I joined that organization and eventually became the chairman, eventually became the person I am today because I joined that organization to try and help improve education, housing, are you with me? Sports, arts and culture, you name it. We were involved in that. And then one day we decided to go and visit this organization in Wolverhampton. And there I found the incredible Earl Lynch. And in
Mhm.
fact, the gentleman that run the organization was a was a white gentleman. And let me say something about him,
Yeah.
Earl. And I say this: when we were going through the biggest problems that we could ever experience at Bridge Park, guess who turned up?
Jeff.
Jeff turned up. His name was
Yeah.
Jeff Parkins. He turned up, and I want to tell you the story, Earl. He came and he's a man that speaks it as it is. And he doesn't beat around the bush and he quiz me. And as he was leaving, Rob, he turned to me and says, how much more money do you have to survive? I was so embarrassed. I said to him, Jeff, I only have 1 month money. This is a white gentleman I'm talking about. And he says, how much money do you need to survive? I said, 6 months worth of money would help me through very nicely. He went away, Earl, and sent me a check for over £6,000 to see me through for the next 6 months to carry on with the fight. And this was a white man. No black man did that. And the point
That's
I want
right.
to make by
Yeah.
this is that there are lots of white people who are for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Are you
Yeah.
with me? They're not against us. They are, in actual
Mm,
fact, they're fighting more for us than a lot of us are
mm,
Yeah.
fighting for ourselves. And
mm.
we have
Yes.
to appreciate that and recognize that. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Rob first, and then
Yeah,
Earl.
yeah. Well, and just on that point, because they can, it's
Yes,
because they have the privilege to,
yeah,
and that's
excellent.
what Michael Holding was talking about. Because there's a lot of us who want to do that, but we're just not being put in that position through
Mm.
slavering. And I used to take the boys actually to Liverpool every year, to
Okay.
Liverpool. Liverpool's got so much history of slavery, so much you can learn, and you can go into the banks in the rooms where they don't use anymore, but it's where they used to do the slave trade. And you go look at the
Mm.
churches; they've got the gargoyles and all these symbols still on the buildings now. They don't put it
Wow,
on the news
wow.
yet. It'll be on the news soon. Trust me, I know Black Lives Matter has made a
Mm.
brilliant piece of progress, and we needed that. But I'm talking about 10 years before this Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm.
We were taking young boys and parents, looking at the buildings and so on, learning so much about the British history. Just the logos that they use, Rule Britannia. There's a square that they use. You can see even French were slaves. There's a statue of French being slaves and tied up and everything. So I thought, yeah, but and I'll talk about this because we've been put in a position as black people generally where we've become slave to the system, and we've had to work double triple hard, and there's many black people. It's just that we're low in numbers are in influential positions now, and have
Mm.
had to behave and do what they do in the courts, in the government. I can name names but I won't. because they're making such an impact right now. We are making progress, but there's a privileged system that we're fighting against, which Michael Holding was talking about. And it's until we can break that more and more, which we are doing, but we need to continue to do that, we can then be the ones writing more checks for other people too. And I am seeing there is a black man, and his name's past me now, who is actually funding the Black Lives Matter movement. You couldn't have been talking about that some years ago, but it's a black man who's writing that check for Black Lives Matter movement,
Excellent.
for them to do what they got to do around the world. And there's many more organizations that are doing that. I talk about King Solomon, and there's people who helped me in my own family. I was going to quit education because I just thought it was too much stress. And it was an uncle who's passed away. He saw something in me. And you asked a question earlier about how do we do this? It starts within the home, the family, encouraging one another. Because I tell you, without that encouragement and people speaking into my life, I think I would become the negative person that other people have spoken to me about as well. And it does make a difference. I think, Pastor Errol, I think you did touch on it some weeks ago, and I think when you was on your own, or when we'd finished, you talked about how people were telling you were no good as this and that and stuff like that. And those as parents, we say that daily without realizing. We got to stop that. And one of the things we used to do in Black Boys Can in the parenting program, which I still do today with my children, the best I can, is look into their eyes to know that I'm present in the room. Just to look into their eyes means that you're listening. And there's lots of times when I'm not listening and they know it. I'm on the computer or my back's turned away. Let's do more of the eye contact. Acknowledge that, I'm in the room. I'm making time for you. These are the things that we teach and that we can continue to teach. Simple things like that make a difference to somebody's self-esteem. When we don't show eye contact, your child doesn't show eye contact, they're going to schools, and you know what? They get in trouble for it. They get in trouble for not showing eye contact. And they don't show eye contact because sometimes as a parent we go, don't you stare at me, it's disrespectful. They go to school, don't do the same, and get penalized for it. So education is not just about the black and white, it's about how do we then relate to one another, black and white.
Yeah.
And this is where Michael Holding is also touching on it as well. There's so many strings to it, and this is just some element. I'm just speaking fast because I want to get all of it in. But privilege is not something we were given. When we came out of slavery, and Brother Earl touched on it, they systematically kept us in slavery. For years, they put us in debt. Instead of paying us for being oppressed, they pay their slave owners to continue to oppress us, And so debts, conviction, crime are still methods of keeping black people in slavery. And so people have woken up to it, but we've got to react to it very wisely, very educated. We need to get into those positions and turn the systems around. So we got a movement here, we got a movement there, we got a movement there, and I'm going to
And
say
that's
it
what
again.
I'm
If we could,
making. Exactly.
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And
We
if we
gotta have
stop
lots of
taking
movements all
people
over the
down,
place.
lots of black and white, Asian, pink, brown, you name it. We cannot do it on our own. And I keep on, stop knocking us down, stop knocking one another down, build each other up. If you see of something good, speak of that rather than the negativity, because there's negativity in every race. In every group. You can talk Islam, Christianity. You can say, oh, this group has done this, but we can't. Yes, we can. Who told you that we can't do it?
And the truth of the matter is we are doing some amazing things in this
amazing
country.
Yeah,
I don't think, I think one of the things which is not happening, there is no media that is sharing it around the black community to say, well, this is what's happening. For example, it would be good, Brother Earl, for us to know how many black trainers are there in the UK, for example. That would be a great list to know, because the truth of the matter is, this is the truth of the matter is, I have hardly come across any black trainers in the field that you and I are doing, but there must be others out there that are doing as good a job as us, or even better. And the point is, in terms of spreading across, is how many shops do we have? How many, hairdressers do we have? How many restaurants do we have? How many? I tell you one thing I do love, though. I do love when I come to Birmingham area. I mean, I must say, the progressiveness of the blacks in Birmingham seems to be greater to me than what's happening in London. And that's just from my thing. So when I come to Russell's restaurant and I sit down. When I, you with me, I went to
Yeah,
another one, and
yeah,
it just makes me feel excited. And what you're
that's right.
saying is we need to support each other, not just necessarily financially, but verbally
Mm.
support
Yes,
each other.
yes, yes.
Earlier large point, because I think we're running out of time and I didn't realize how
Is that the
man this
time?
is.
Wow, look at the
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
and we didn't even get to cover everything, but go ahead.
I love your point there, Errol, because at the end of the day, when you look at the civil rights movement back in 1968, Martin Luther King started with protest. Protest only brings attention to your issue.
Hmm.
The next thing that he was getting onto was economic action.
Hmm.
Now, economic action means you spend the black pound within the black community, you make it circulate a few times. But right
Hmm.
now, our black pound is being spent anywhere but the black community. And you're right,
Yeah,
half of the
yeah.
people, we don't know who they are, we don't know where black business is, we don't patronize black business, and therefore, black business means that you'll probably find it very rare to find a black
Mm,
millionaire. We need black millionaires to be able to make a difference at the high
Mm.
level that
mm.
everybody else is already looking at. There was a
Are you a black
wonderful little
millionaire yet,
metaphor.
Earl? Are you a black millionaire yet? You're not gonna
Right,
tell
not
me.
quite. You got to give me that
I'm
right.
only joking.
But here's the thing, right? There was a lady who
Yeah,
used the metaphor. It's like playing a game of Monopoly, but we as
yes,
black people, we've not been allowed to get any money or any property for the first 400 rounds, but
Yes, yes.
everybody else can. Yeah. That's what
Playing
it's
catch up.
feeling like,
Mm.
and it's going to
yes,
be
absolutely, yes.
impossible to catch up. But if we're given some support and if we restate the rules and restart some of the game, we can do it. But it's going to
But
be a tough slog.
in actual fact, with Monopoly, one of the things I like about Monopoly, because I don't play Monopoly to lose, and all I'm trying to do is get around the board faster than anybody else to start buy up and anything I land on I buy. It
Mm,
There
doesn't.
you go.
If I land on the
mm,
Don't
free,
have
I'm trying to buy it. I know I can't buy it, but if I land on the
mm.
free, I'm trying to buy it.
Yeah.
But
Mm,
it's sad when you pull a community card, I think, or a chance, and it says go back to jail. And I think that's
mm,
what's
yeah,
happened to the black community, isn't it? We're being sent right
mm.
back to jail over and over and over.
yeah,
But I want to share with you a story before I close. And this is it's I don't think it's for everybody, but I think it's a story I heard of a guy who was in slavery, and what they did was they put chains on his feet and put him in the mud to work. And every day he has to trample in the mud with his and the iron is very heavy and
Mm.
very, very painful. And eventually, to cut the story short, they put him on a running track. And this guy, was able to break, the world record and things like that because of, while he was in the dirt, his muscles were growing. And the point I
Built
wanted to
them up.
make earlier, going back to you and I, and you made this point before, and I think Rob made the point as well, is that because of the disadvantage of being black in a white environment, we have to train twice. In actual fact, you mentioned twice, Earl. I mean, Rob.
Mm,
It was three
mm.
times I had to train. I
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
and I love Earl. I love the point you made earlier, and that's why I was laughing because it's exactly with
Mm,
me. I say to myself when I get into that classroom, this is it, within the first 10 seconds. By the time I open my mouth, I've got every
yeah,
white
yeah.
person where I want them to be, because they know that this guy, especially for
Knows what-
example, I normally do it with my introduction. With my introduction to
Yeah,
say, let me tell you who I am, and how
yeah,
I
yeah.
got to this particular place. And by the time I finish with them, I have them. You with
mhm,
me? We're
mm,
gonna,
mhm.
listen, we're gonna have to stop it here, because my goodness, and I didn't even go to the chat room. But let me just, you guys are so amazing that I didn't even get to the. Listen, it's pointless me going to the chat room at the moment because it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And I need to bring it to an end. But I want to give you guys a minute and a half each, just to. This was a powerful video, and I think it's worth people watching it. and points about education, brainwashing. I wanted to show a picture about. I was listening to a preacher once, and he says, if you talk about terrorism, this is terrorism. And he spoke about how this is in our church buildings and stainless, stained windows and things like that. The white Jesus, everything is white except Judas, and this is exactly what Michael Alden was talking about. White privileges, and listen to this carefully. It doesn't even matter whether you're a millionaire black or male or female. They also talk about racism even at their level, and I've listened to it, and so on. History being written by the advantage rather than the disadvantage, and so on. But dehumanization. Judas is black. Satan is black. But everybody good is white. Are you with me? And this is a part of being the brainwashing. Michael Olin said he was never taught anything good about black people. And when
That's
he
right.
talks about, you talk about Thomas Edison, that's all we ever talk about. We never talk about Louis Howard Latimer, the paper filament and so on. But just maybe literally 2 minutes each. I'm going to extend it to 2 minutes each. Your last thoughts on this. 2 minutes. Time yourself and then just take 2 minutes. Let me start with Robin and Earl and then we close off. Yeah.
Okay, it's 2 minutes 20. Right. So I want to close on power because I think what we've spoken about is power on different elements. And, we even talk about racism. Racism is driven by power. And I don't know if many people know, but it's not always been this way. And I know that because I've studied the Bible. I look at the fight because there's always a period where power changes hands. And in the Bible, I'm going to start with Egypt. Egypt was a powerful nation, powerful, clever, invented things, you name it. And then came another nation, then came God's people, the Israelites who were taken out of Egypt. Moses fought against the power. Then there became, I don't know, the Romans times who ended up killing Jesus. There was power, but it was never against black and white. It was against, if you like, Gentiles and Jews. That it was racism. You read in the Bible about the Samaritans. They were they were exiles. You went to talk to them, but guess who spoke to them? Jesus. And he's the greatest leader. What I'm saying is racism is here in terms of black and white for a while. We may never see that change in our lifetime, but for me, I have to bring it back to my faith that there's a spirit that we're fighting behind all this. It's this spirit of power. Yeah, it's an evil spirit, and it's got to the point where they call another human not human because they're seeking power through the color of the skin. It's nonsense, but that's the spirit that's driving them, this evil spirit. But when you look at the history, black and white racism hasn't been around for a long time, 500 years, 600 years, let's give it that. But when you study the history, it was this race against another race for power. And then someone devised a way of going, right, we want to be the ideal race and kill out the race, genocide. Yeah, and then you got people like Hitler trying to do it, but there was so many antichrists trying to do the same thing, So we've got to a period now where it's black and white. Unfortunately, we're living in the era where your color of your skin for some people, makes you feel inferior. It's a spirit. So as much as the education we talk about, we can't really overcome this without, the grace of God and the Holy Spirit, because this power is driving us into division. Not just black and white, but black and black as well. Don't forget that Africans in particular had a very big part to play in slavery. Why? Because they were given power in terms of guns and mirrors and everything else. And at the time, they saw that as important. So we've got to know our history to know where we're going. And I've gone over 2 minutes, so I have to cut it there. But it's power, and we can fight this by seeking power.
Thank you very much, Brother Rob. Earl, 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to keep it real simple. The images that we've seen about a white Christ and black devil and black Judas, remember this: everyone paints their God in their own image. So we want to look at what Christ taught us rather than what people have depicted him to look like. But I just want to close with three quotations from Dr. Martin Luther King. He said that in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So those who are in power, we want them to join us on the struggle. We want them to join us on the march, join us on the journey from injustice to justice. But you'll notice that if they stay silent, that's what's going to hurt us. In addition to that, life's most persistent and urgent question is all about what are we going to do for others? This is not just about us. I think Rob just mentioned that, he was looking forward, that what can we do for the next generation, for our children and for our children's children. And the last thing, and this speaks to power as well, freedom, our freedom is never going to come voluntarily, and it's never going to be voluntarily given up by people who are in power right now, or the oppressor, as Martin Luther King calls it. It must be demanded. We must demand change. Don't just think that it's going to be given to you. You got to demand, you got to fight for it, you got to protest for it, you got to argue for it, you got to put yourself in a position where people realize we're not messing about. We are due this. I spoke about reparations a couple of weeks ago. I'm even more convinced that we should have reparations now. The money should be given back to us that we've missed out on as a consequence of the oppression that we've gone through. But that's another argument for another day.
Yes, yes.
I appreciate what you've given us today, Brother Errol, and the opportunity to speak. I'm sorry we didn't get to the chat room. Maybe we're going to have to extend this for another week. But thank you.
Well, I'm hoping next week we did invite some sisters to join us, and I think they were saying next week might be the time. So, Rob, that might be next week. So
All
hopefully
right.
if they are ready for us, then we would do that. If not, then I think this subject is a good one. But I want to say thanks to you guys very, very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wives who have allowed you guys to come on
Yes.
and be with us.
Yeah.
When I say allow, you know what I mean. But
Uh,
they do support us, and
no, they do.
and so on, and they're amazing, amazing women. So thanks, guys, and I see you
And thank
guys.
you.
Yeah, no, appreciate
Bless
that
you.
very much, brother. Blessings,
Bless you.
blessings, blessings, blessings. Wow, wow. I could carry on talking to Rob and Earl for the next week. And amazing. Sorry that we couldn't get to the chat room. When I looked at the time, I realized it was 8 o'clock, and so it just was not going to work. But to God be the glory. I just want to just share with you some announcements, and then just leave you three quick thoughts just before you go. Just want to remind you of our worship foundation course that's coming up, and it's the 16th of July. Over 100 people. I want to get it up to 250 people. That's what I'm trying to do. To attend. So if you can, that'd be great. Don't forget, tomorrow is the big day for us at the Global Address. You need to go to live at cogop.org, not .com or .org.uk, but cogop.org, cogop.org. Please, it's 3 p.m. tomorrow, and let us arrive early and be there to support and to hear what's going on. So that's tomorrow with our General Overseer Bishop Sam Clements, and the 7 General Presbyters also will be there, and so we look forward to that. Just to remind you of our virtual online service, cogop.com/virtual. If you're interested in the course that we're running, it's bit.ly/such stress. You need to register at Eventbrite, and that will be automatically sent out to you. And that would be a Zoom affair, actually. It's going to be a Zoom event lasting 2 hours. The benefits, you need to read the benefits and then make your decision in regards to that. And finally, Sunday night is our session based upon Illuminate Through the Holy Spirit. We do have Pastor Innocent Panzu, and he's from the Church of God of Prophecy there in Belgium. We look forward to welcoming him. It will be through an interpreter, so we look forward to that. So please join us on Sunday evening. let me just round off with three thoughts. Four. I want to make it four. I want to make it four thoughts. And then we will close out from there. I must say it was a truly amazing video that we watched, and by Michael Holding. 3 points out, 4 points. Let me just start with number one that came out for me today. And number one is this: is that be careful of your mindset, the way you're thinking. And as was said by Brother Earl tonight, you are good enough. For any job that you go for, you are good enough. Providing you've done the training, you've done what you need to do. You're gonna have to put the work in, obviously, to be good enough. In the sense of, if you're going for a job, you're more than good enough. As Brother Earl spoke about his experience about going to work in various companies to do training, I always seem to get the feeling that maybe some of the white folks are asking, "This is a black guy. What can he tell me? What can he really possibly teach me?" And but you gotta feel to yourself, know to yourself that you're good enough to do that particular job. You're as good as a white man, or even far better, depending on how well trained you are. And so you're good enough. And Brother Earl spoke of his experience. And from my experience, when I started off in the world of training, management training, that is 99.9% of my clients have been white. Everyone sitting in the classroom, majority have been white. Maybe 70% of those students may be white. You may have different, cultures in the room. But I built up that confidence where I got to the place where, I know that I was one of the best trainers in the world. There was no question in my mind about that. That's how I felt. That was my mindset. I was incredibly confident. Some people might call it, arrogance. No, I was extremely confident in myself that I was one of the best trainers in the world. And when I wrote my book, it gave me even far more confidence. I remember once a CEO of a top train company invited me into his office. And when I put my book on the table, I mean, the confidence in this black kid was beyond belief. I was so confident that they were using the best trainer, in my eyes, in the country. And they paid me well. I mean, there's no doubt about this, because I believe I am very, very good because of my mindset. I believe I'm good enough. So my first thought to you is, you got to believe that you're good enough. If you don't believe you're good enough, you've lost before you even go into the interview. When I go into an interview, this is my attitude. When I go into the interview, I go into the interview to interview them. You see, they're going to interview me, but I'm going to also interview them. Is this the company I want to work for? Is this the company that I want to do training for? I'm not going in as a desperate, bystander. I'm going in as an equal partner with you, because what I'm giving you is probably more than you'll ever get anywhere else, probably. So I go in with that kind of confidence. You're good enough, and you got to make sure that you're equipped, you're trained. You see, let me tell you about luck. Luck, and make sure you get this definition very clearly. Luck is preparation meeting opportunity. In other words, you're prepared so that when the opportunity comes, that's luck. I got to get you to understand that. We're not talking about luck by chance, where you put, money on this for a bingo or whatever. No, we're talking about preparation that meets opportunity. That's luck. Okay. Bad luck then is when you get the opportunity but you weren't prepared. That's bad luck. And so you got to be ready for it. If a company calls me right now, call Earl Lynch tonight, and says, "I need you to deliver a training tomorrow for a week," we're ready. We're ready to deliver. We're ready. We've got our program designed and ready to deliver. That's how ready we are. And so you're good enough. That's my first point. Second thing I want to bring to you is this. It's all right asking, what is the church doing? What is the government doing? What is so-and-so doing? What is that organization doing? It's not really, that is my second point. My second point is this: what are you doing? What are you doing to make a difference? You might say, well, I'm disabled, or I'm not able, I don't have the finances. But I'm still going to ask you, what are you doing? You can join another organization, even from a wheelchair. You can actually find out about what other organizations are doing to, improve Black Lives Matter, and you can get involved. I got involved in an organization when I was 22, couldn't read and write, had no education, just came out of prison. I joined them in 1981, and I just came out of prison just like a few days ago. I had nothing to, I was unemployable, but I still started to do something and educate myself. So my question to you watching tonight, and to all of those who will be watching this recording, what are you doing? Stop asking the question, what's the church doing? And so on, and start asking the real question: what are you doing? What has the Lord called you to do? What can I do? I like what Paul said in the book of Acts. It says, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? That's the key to my second point. Lord, this is what I want you to say. Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? What is it that you want me to do? And I think that for me is absolutely paramount. Because it's. I remember once I was saying to this white gentleman, the church, this, the church, this, the church, this, and what happened basically hit me in the stomach and says, go do it. Um, uh, you know, and I was absolutely taken back by the fact that this man hit me in the chest, and hit me in the chest and said, "Go and do it." 3 times he did this, and I wanna say, ask the Lord that question. So I'm gonna share with you this verse, and it's Acts chapter 9. Acts chapter 9, and this is the verse that you may want to look at. And he trembling, this is the Apostle Paul, just got converted and the road to Damascus, and he trembling and astonished said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said, arise, go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. So Paul asked the question, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And I have to ask this question to myself today. And I know that what the Lord has told me to do. And today I'm pastoring and I'm doing something. I'm training people. I'm developing people. I'm running these online studies and training and all kind of stuff. I'm doing something. And it's people who are not doing anything are the first one to say, what are you doing? And you're not doing enough. I've had people say that to me. You're not doing enough. Are you kidding me? What are you doing? Is the question I'm posing. What are you doing? Do what you can where you can. You're not necessarily sent to save the world. Jesus was. So your job is not to save the entire world, but your job is to do your contribution where you are. Do the best that you can where you are. So what are you doing? Thirdly, and I think this is probably one of the overriding thing about tonight. It's about education. And I first of all would say you need to start by educating yourself. You see, you can't train up a child in the way he should go. And let's look at that scripture in Proverbs 22. I believe it's Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6, the famous 22:6 quote. And you will see it here. Now, there are people who say that you can train a child up. I've heard this before said by a preacher, and preachers got to be careful what they say, that you can train a child up, and this scripture is not saying that that child is going to turn out right. Well, I would have to beg to differ to that personally. I'd have to beg to differ, because if that is the case, then this scripture is wrong. And this scripture should not be in the Bible. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not He will not. Now, listen to this. The reason why many of us cannot train up a child in the way they should go, because a part of that training of that child involves that we have to be walking the talk. How can I train a child up in the way the child should go if I'm not doing and going the way God said we should go? I want you to try and understand me. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're following everything that God says. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you're doing things right. You see, you could have a husband and wife who are Christian, but they're arguing with each other. Notice what it says, in the way he should go. In the way he should go. So there is a way that he should go. You're going to have to be walking in that way too, because I heard a child says, what you do speaks louder than what you say. So I want to ask the parents, first of all, are you walking in the way that you should walk 100%? And are you training that child to walk in that way? Because many of the times, children who I hear parents say that they've trained their child, and I trained my child. I trained him the best I could, but it just wasn't good enough. I want to say that because I had a situation where even though my wife was good and I was good, we were unbalanced because she's unsaved, I'm saved, two teachers in the house, even though she's not sitting with them and teaching them, but her philosophy, her ideals, her values are being lived out practically in front of them, which is also teaching them. So that wasn't the way they should go. My wife and I were not walking in the way we should go as a couple perfectly. And I believe that we have to start with educating ourselves. Are we educated enough? And that's what we have to ask ourselves. And then we have to educate our family, our children, our grandchildren. We've got to take that responsibility. And many of us fathers are not in the home to train our children. We're not there. We're either absent or those who are there are not doing what they should be doing because they might be watching TV, playing golf. And rather than training up their son in the way he should go, then we're going to find that something else may be taught to that child. So education is absolutely key. We need to get involved in education. A lot of us parents are not involved in the school education. It would be great to see a lot more men who were school governors involved in the education system within the government, local authorities, and things like that, being involved at the highest level. It's amazing now the Chinese and a lot of other Asian, community, they're highly involved. They're involved. They have a culture of education. They have a culture of all these things. So what we as the Black people have to do, then we have to educate ourselves. We have to get involved in these things. Many of us don't have the time for it, the energy for it, and so on. So, I was a school governor for some time in the school. I used to go to the school, and when the teacher found out what I did, I used to give talks to the assembly. And you know what was amazing about that? When my children saw what I was doing in their school, it made them, that tall. You and me, they were so proud of Daddy, and we would talk about that and so on. And education is key. Here, let me share another scripture with you. Hosea 4 and verse 6. And here's what Hosea 4 and verse 6 says. Let me just find that for us. Hosea 4 and verse 6. My people, and they are destroyed. Why? Lack of knowledge, lack of education. And what tends to happen is they rejected knowledge. You see that? That's what happened. It's not that the knowledge didn't exist. The knowledge is there. Listen to this carefully. More knowledge is there today than when that was written over 2,500, 3,000 years ago. Let me say this again. Let me say it so you can understand me. There's more knowledge today quadruple more than what existed at that time, around 3,000 years ago. And yet we are more ignorant today and more far removed from God today than we can ever be. And because many people have rejected the knowledge of God, they've rejected the knowledge. And so by rejecting knowledge, God says, I also will reject thee from being priest before me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget your children. That's exactly what God has done. So education is key. Now listen to this carefully. You know, when I was 22, I joined this organization, and I had no money. And I decided to go into what's known as self-development. That means I take on the responsibility of developing myself. And it's been a long journey, but I took that responsibility to do so. I took that responsibility to ensure that I became educated. So even like last night, you know, I normally in the night, I normally use my iPad and my iPhone. And normally I'm on the iPhone listening to some of the top speaker in the world while I'm doing something else on the iPad. And what I'm saying basically is this: you're going to have to educate yourself. Now, there are 3 areas, and I'm going to close out on this. 3 areas that you ought to bear in mind, that you ought to focus on in training and development. I'm going to see if I can actually put this on the screen if I can. And there are 3 areas that I strongly recommend that you focus on if you want to become a master in this. A master, I mean, absolute master. And if Earl was here, he would probably agree with me. And I want to use a triangle, if I may, to just bring out these points, because I think that, you know, it's important for us to recognize, you know, what we ought to focus on. So I'm just going to make it very quickly and put this in green. The first one is that you need to work on is your attitude. Your attitude. That's just self-explanatory. You know, we just have to work on our attitude, and nobody can change your attitude but you. You know, you got to work on that yourself. The next thing is you got to become good at what you do. You know, you just got to become the best possible person you can at that. You know, skilled at what? Is it guitar? Is it bass? Is it, you know, a doctor? You got to become skilled. And finally, knowledge. We call it the ASK of life. ASK. So I strongly recommend, I won't go any further than that. I strongly recommend that you work on yourself, build up your attitude, become better, become more skilled, become more knowledgeable in the field that you have chosen to work on. So let me just clarify what I am saying tonight, and so that you're clear. You are good enough. Make sure your mindset is powerful enough. Make sure your mindset is incredibly confident in God, in yourself, in your ability to actually achieve and to do the best. You are good enough. You are more than good enough. You know, get your mindset right. Number 2, do something. Join some organization, join a church, join a community, get involved into where you feel more passionate. Ask God the question, what will thou have me to do? You're not sent here to change the world. No, that's not your job. Your job is to do what you can do where you are and do it to the best of your knowledge and ability. Your time is running out. You're going to die soon. That's the reality. You know, you're going to die too. Every time I go for a walk in the cemetery, that's where I go for a walk is in the cemetery. It reminds me, Errol, you ain't got long left. Every time I go, I'm reminded, you ain't got long left. Do the best you can. And that's what I'm doing. You know, I'm just doing what God called me to do. I said a long time ago, Father, what will you have me to do? And I'm doing the best I can where I can. And there's always room for improvement, you know, and so on. So what are you doing? Do something. Finally, educate yourself. Educate yourself. Become better at ASK. The more you develop your ASK, the more money you make, the more you're worth, the more powerful you become, the more confident you become, and the more people want to be in your presence. Let me say it again. The more you develop your ASK, your attitude, skills, and knowledge, the more money you make, the more confident you become, the more powerful you become, the more people want to be in your presence, and the more you just are able to do some amazing things. Trust me on that. Develop yourself. When should you develop yourself? Every day. Where are you going to get the money? Find the money. Spend 10% of everything you earn and develop in yourself. We call that return on investment, the ROI principle. Return on investment. You put that 10% of what you're earning, 10%. You're developing yourself. Every money you make, spend it back on yourself to develop yourself. You can become the best. That's what I do. I'm going to close off by introducing you to the number one top university in the world that I know. So I'm just going to write this in red. So get ready to make a note of this. This is the university that I attend. And it's a really wonderful university because I remember back a few years ago when they passed the laws that, you'd have to pay a certain amount of thousands of pounds to go to university and study subjects. I wanted to, look at studying, getting paperwork because I teach counseling, but I don't have the paperwork for it. So I thought I was going to go and look at it. And when I saw the prices, I was absolutely amazed. But anyway, here is the top university that I attend. This is the number one university that I attend. I'm sure you probably heard of it. That's where I go. I've been at that university now since I started. Yeah, I'm their best student, to tell you the honest truth. But anyway, brothers and sisters, I'm gonna have to leave you now, and gonna have to say farewell and thank you. For those of you that didn't see the video, I'm gonna show it again, and then we close off. This is a video by Michael Holding, and this was that formed the basis of our talk tonight. So take care of yourself, guys, and each other. Until next time. Bye for now.
How did you feel speaking down the barrel of a camera about this subject?
Well, I obviously didn't get as emotional as Ebony because, as I said in that video, I didn't really experience a great deal of that as a young man growing up in Jamaica, perhaps because I wasn't in that society or mixing with people that would have shown me that racism. But what I want to expand on, though, Wardy, is what I said about education. Education is important unless we just want to continue living the life that we are living and continue just having demonstrations every now and again and a few people saying a few things. And when I say education, I mean going back in history. What people need to understand is that this thing stems from a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. The dehumanization of the black race is where it started. And people will tell you, oh, that's a long time ago, get over it. No, you don't get over things like that. And the society has not gotten over something like that. I'll skip all the gap between those long years ago and make one point and then go backward. That lady in the Central Park in New York, Amy Cooper, I think is her name. If she did not have in her DNA the thought process that she was white, this man is black, if I call a police officer, 9 times out of 10 he's going to be white, I'm going to be considered right immediately. The black guy will have to prove that he's not guilty, and by the time he proves that he's not guilty, he might be dead. She had that in her mind from day one. That is why she said and did what she did. How do you get rid of that in the society? By educating both sides, black and white. I hear people talking about brainwashing. I didn't quite understand as a young man what brainwashing meant. I now understand what brainwashing meant, what it means. We have been brainwashed, and not just black people. White people have been brainwashed in different ways. I go back many years. Think about religion. You and I are supposed to be Christians. I'm not really a very holy person, not a very religious person. But that's what we were taught. Look at Jesus Christ, the image that they give you of Jesus Christ. Pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Where Jesus came from, who in that part of the world looks that way? But again, that's the brainwashing to show you this is what perfection is. This is what the image of perfection is. If you look at any plays of those days, Judas, who betrayed Jesus, he's a black man. Again, brainwashing people into think, oh, he's a black man. He's the bad man. Go through history, Wardy. These lights that are shining on us. You can tell me who invented the light bulb, right? Thomas Edison, right? Everybody knows Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Thomas Edison invented a light bulb with a paper filament. It burnt out in no time at all. Can you tell me who invented the filament that makes these lights shine throughout? Nobody knows, because he's a black man. It was not taught in schools. Louis Howard Latimer invented the carbon filament to allow lights to continuously shine. Who knows that? Everything should be taught. When you go back through the schooling as a young man, I remember my school days. I was never taught anything good about black people. And you cannot have a society that is brought up like that, both white and black, that only teach what's convenient to the teacher. History is written by the conqueror, not by those that are conquered. History is written by the people who do the harm, not by the people who get harmed. And we need to go back and teach both sides of history. And until we do that and educate the entire human race, this thing will not stop. They keep on telling me there's nothing called white privilege. Give me a break. I don't see any white people going into a store on Oxford Street and being followed. A black man walks in, somebody is following him everywhere he goes. That is basic white privilege. Whether that white person went in to rob the place or not, is not going to be thought of that way. And things like that have to change.